It's Tuesday, or maybe Wednesday by the time you're seeing this, and I do apologize. But that means it's time for another Top 10 Tuesday video. This time, continuing on our class series, it's Paladins. My favorite class in 5th edition, and maybe yours too. If you want to see what my top 10 magic items are for Paladins, stay tuned. Standard stuff up front. Let's get some things out of the way. We are not doing consumable items. That means potions, scrolls, and the like. We are not doing any legendary items. We are not doing any artifacts. We're not doing any sentient items. We're not doing anything that benefits literally everybody, like the various tomes and books that add a +2 to a stat and raise your overall ability score. That's useful on anyone, and usually multiple of them are useful. I'm also going to say up front, yes, Holy Avenger. The Paladin Holy Grail, or Holy Avenger, I guess, depending on how you look at it. That's the item you want to get for your Paladin, 100%, but it's a legendary item, therefore it falls outside of the scope of this video, but I did want to call it out as, yes, that's obviously what you want. So anyway, on to number 10. Number 10. Number 10 is the Belt of Giant Strength. Again, this is another one of those things that's probably going to show up on a lot of your strength-based melee classes, like, say, a fighter or some clerics, barbarian. I didn't really show up on the barbarian because of that, but you're a paladin. You're likely going to be strength-based. Yes, there is the option for dexterity-based paladin builds, although I'm going to say that that's probably not the norm due to paladins typically wearing heavy armor. So getting a Belt of Giant Strength, I feel, is pretty useful for you. You're not going to get any benefits like the Barbarian 20th level ability and how many games actually go to 20th level. So Belt of Giant Strength to boost your strength up. I mean, you could start off with the Hill Giant Strength one, which is only rare, which sets your strength to a 21. So you're already at what most people are going to have as their max. And that only downside is this is a the rarity varies depending on what you're looking at. This is from the Dungeon Master's Guide. It is attunement, though, so to kind of have one of your primary ability scores be as high as you want it to be, you're going to have to sacrifice an attunement slot. But if you get something that's in the very rare range, then it's obviously absolutely worth it. But you could get by with something like a rare one, like the Hill Giant Strength Belt, and then there's no real, it's a rare item, and you'll still have the maximum strength you would have. It's just that trade-off. Number 9. Number 9 is what I'm going to call mount items. As a paladin, you are pretty much one of the only classes that out the gate has access to the Find Steed spell and the Find Greater Steed spell. So there are certain items that you can get in the player's hand, in the Dungeon Master's Guide that will help out in that scenario. So let's take a look. We've got Horeshoes of Speed over here, which is a rare item that increases the walking speed of your horse or your shoed. It says hooves, so it's hooves or, horse, if it's not a horse, like maybe an elk or something. Increases their walking speed by 30 feet. So that's a pretty decent adjustment. I think like a warhorse has a movement speed of 60 feet. This just made it 90. And again, it's a Find Steed creature, so that's pretty useful. We also have the Horeshoes of the Zephyr, which allow your creature to float 4 inches above the ground. This means they can stand above non-solid or unstable surfaces such as water or lava. So, for instance, now your horse or mount, Find Steed, can run over liquids, which makes, expands the amount of times you can use your mount even more so. In addition, it leaves no tracks and ignores difficult terrain, which is great. And it can move at normal speed for up to 12 hours a day without suffering exhaustion. So that is pretty big deal. So it's one of the two. And then lastly is Saddle of the Cavalier, which is while in this mount, you can't be dismounted against your will if you're conscious. And attack rolls against your mount have disadvantage, which is super useful because your mount, depending on what kind of DM you have, your Find Steed or mount is going to either be targeted all the time or not at all. And if they're being directly targeted with attacks, giving them disadvantage. So in an ideal world, you'd have the saddle and one of these 2 horseshoe sets, but I thought I'd kind of group them all together as mount items. Also, let me know what you guys think about me moving everything over to this side. I got a comment on it, so it was over here. I moved it up here. Let me know what you think. Number 8. Number 8 is kind of a cop-out answer, and there's actually going to be what I consider to be cop-out answers quite a bit for this, because For Paladins, a lot of things you want to have a thing of a type, but which one is not necessarily specific. So this one is some sort of ranged option. As a Paladin, more often than not, you're not going to have a great dexterity. You're going to be primarily strength focused. Again, I realize that's not all the cases, but one thing Paladins lack is ranged capabilities. Yes, you have martial weapon proficiency, so you could take something like a crossbow or a longbow or something like that, but it's still probably going to be using dexterity. So what I would recommend is some form of ranged attack. It doesn't have to be something you can do every turn, but something you can do consistently to give yourself some range. So that could be something like a Javelin of Lightning. We've talked about that before on other ones of these videos. That gives you a little more damage, and it uses your strength, which is a nice benefit. Or because you are a spellcaster, once you hit level 2 as a Paladin, that opens the world to all attunement-based wands and staves that are requires attunement by a spellcaster. So this could be something as simple as a Wand of Magic Missile, which is non-attunement, or something like a Wand of Fireball or Lightning Bolts, something that you wouldn't normally have access to those spells, which will also answer one of the other Paladin's issues, which is you don't have access to a ton of AoE, so like a Wand of Fireballs or Staff of Thunder and Lightning, or any of those kind of things that are going to give you spells that you won't have as a Paladin that will then increase your versatility by giving you range, and potentially AoE is this one. So really any of those, like I said, it could be as simple as a Javelin of Lightning, but it could be more like, a Wand of Paralysis or Viscid Globs or whatever, or a staff, like I said, of Thunder and Lightning, or Striking. Striking's more melee, but you get my point. A magic staff or wand or a Javelin of Lightning, something that's going to let you do range damage. Number 7. Number 7 is the Belt of Dwarvenkind. I've put this on my list before, and as someone who played a Paladin for 17 levels, this was one of the items that I had, and I was super pumped about it. As a Paladin, you're going to want to have a decent charisma score, which I feel like opens up a lot of the charisma races, things like half-elves and other things like that, but they're not going to typically have too high of a constitution, and depending on which route you go, you're probably not going to have resistance to poison damage. So in this case, the Belt of Dwarvenkind, which is an attunement item from the Dungeon Master's Guide, is most useful when you are not playing a dwarf, because it's going to give you a +2 to constitution. You are a Paladin, you're probably going to be in melee taking hits, so having more health is going to be important. It's also be useful for concentration spells. You don't have too many of them, and you may have one up going in or during combat, but you don't have a ton. You're going to get advantage on persuasion checks to interact with dwarves. You're a Paladin, so your charisma score is going to be pretty good, so that's an option for you. You have the opportunity to grow a beard, which is nice, and then you'll also get the advantage on saving throws against poison and resistance to poison damage. Dark vision out to 60 feet if you're a race that doesn't have it, and then the freebie of speaking, reading, and writing Dwarven, or Dwarvish. So I do think the Belt of Dwarvenkind is very useful. I had it on a half-elf Paladin, so the extension of the dark vision out to 60 feet wasn't useful to me, but it put me in a great spot by giving me the Constitution and the resistance and advantage for things like poison, which is again one of the most common types of damage in Dungeons and Dragons. So getting resistance to it, plus your inborn Paladin abilities with your Aura of Courage, is just going to really compound with this to make you that much more survivable. Number 6. Number 6 is the Cloak of Displacement. As I've stated in the past, it's a fantastic magic item for anyone who's going to find themselves consistently in the fray, or in some form of melee, whether it's for doing quick hits, like glass cannon style, like a rogue, or whether it's to be face rolling and tanking enemies, like potentially a Paladin or a Barbarian. Cloak of Displacement is going to go a long way. It's a rare item from the Dungeon Master's Guide. It does require attunement, and it's going to give any creature disadvantage on attack rolls against you. If you take damage, it ceases until the start of your next turn, and it is suppressed if you're incapacitated, restrained, or otherwise unable to move. Again, why be the tank who tanks by just having enough HP to soak up all the damage, when you could be a tank who tanks by just having the enemy miss you consistently? Again, having more HP is not a bad idea, but this should help make your life a little bit easier. Opportunity attacks won't feel as dangerous if they're always made at disadvantage. So I'm a big fan of the Cloak of Displacement, and that's why it's been on so many of my lists. Number 5. So for number 5, I have the Spellguard Shield on here, which is a very rare item that requires attunement. But honestly, as a Paladin, you're just want to have a magic shield of some kind. This could be something simple, like a Sentinel Shield. It's going to give you some good benefits. This could be a +3 shield. This could be an animated shield if you're a Paladin who wants to wield two-handed. But you want some kind of magic shield, and that's just kind of, it's a thing that you're going to more than likely use, so you want to have it. I chose the Spellguard Shield because it's going to give you advantage on saving throws against spells and other magical effects, and spell attacks have disadvantage against you. So this is a shield that functions pretty much identically to the Mantle of Spell Resistance, but then adding the spell attacks have disadvantage against you. So it's a cool looking shield as well. It is an attunement slot, so that's something to think about. But this, again, compiled with adding your Charisma modifier to all of your saving throws, is going to help to make you overall more... You'll stay in the fight longer because you'll be more survivable. Number 4. For number 4, I have Mizzium Armor on here. This is a rare, non-attunement item from the Guildmaster's Guide to Ravnica supplement. So if you don't have Ravnica and you're not planning to use it, more or less, get yourself some magic armor. In my campaign that I played in, the one I've been talking about, I had Adamantine Plate, and I never regretted having that. It came in handy quite often. Mizzium Plate, as we'll read here, is basically Adamantine Plate, but better. Any critical hits become normal hits against you, and in addition, when you're subjected to a magical effect that forces you to make a Strength or Constitution save to take only half damage, you instead take no damage if you succeed on the saving throw. So that's really good. It could potentially... it has a lot of good... I really like the Mizzium Armor because it's just like Adamantine Armor plus. The difference is it's rare, whereas Adamantine Armor is uncommon. Again... I've had it in a campaign. I highly recommend it. It's also a really good way to get yourself plate mail. If like a DM says like you have an uncommon or rare magic item, you can then say, okay, well, I'll choose one of those, but as plate so I can get it. But really, any magic armor would be good. A +2, +1, +3, plate mail would, or whatever kind of mail you're planning to wear would be really useful. It's really any kind of magic armor. A mithril armor if you wanted to avoid your dexterity stealth checks at disadvantage. Mizzium armor is my suggestion, but you're a paladin. Get yourself a magic shield. Get yourself a magic suit of armor. Number 3. Number 3 is going to be, again, what I'm going to consider another cop-out kind of answer, and that is a magic weapon. I've done this in the past for Barbarian, but as a Paladin, you don't necessarily need to have a specific type of magic item to be, a magic weapon to be effective. What you want to get or have access to as a Paladin is a magic weapon as early on as possible, so your damage is going to your attacks will overcome damage resistance. But also, so if you can find a way through a magic item, like something maybe like the Scimitar of Speed that gives you extra attacks, something beyond your 2 that you already have, you're going to want to have that. Because once you hit level 11 as a Paladin, you get a thing called Improved Divine Smite, which every melee attack you make and succeed, it's going to add an extra d8. So where a fighter is going to want to have magic items that are going to do a lot more damage because they attack more often, you do more damage with, Improved Divine Smite, adding an extra d8 to every strike you make. You're going to want to find a way to get yourself access to more attacks. But again, Sunblade is a pretty common one people like to have. It feels very paladin-y. It's kind of like a lightsaber. Frostbrand or Flame Tongue, both good options. Frostbrand's pretty cool because it gives you the resistance. But again, some kind of magic weapon. I also like the Weapon of Warning, one that's going to help out with initiative and help wake up your party so they can't be surprised. That just kind of goes a long way to help build party dynamics. Hey guys, don't worry, we can't be surprised. I've got my longsword. That's a longsword of warning. So anyway, get yourself a magic weapon. Number 2. Number 2 is the Necklace of Prayer Beads. I've talked about this a bunch already for both Cleric and Druid. Paladin's the only other person that can gain access to this, so I would recommend if you can get it, get it. This is a rare item that requires attunement from the Dungeon Master's Guide. Basically, you're going to roll and get some specific beads made of a certain type. And what's cool about any of these spells is you can cast them. The beads correspond to the different spells. I should have said that. But you can cast any of the spells that you have in this way as a bonus action, which is great because some of these are normally actions or longer. Like Bless is a really great spell, but it takes up your whole action. If Bless was a bonus action, like it is with this, that could be really useful. Same thing with bonus action Cure Wounds or any of the restoration spells. But also something like Windwalk takes 1 minute to cast. Now it casts as a bonus action. Planar Ally, 10 minutes. Now it's only 1 minute. You know, that kind of a thing. I really like the Necklace of Prayer Beads. That was another item that I had on my Paladin from my campaign, and I really enjoyed it. I've had it on several Paladins since then, and I always come back to getting this item because Planar Ally is a super useful spell depending on how you work with your DM to get it to show up, to have some sort of creature come and help you with whatever task you're associating it with. So I'm a big fan of that. I don't really like Branding Smite that much, but it's here to have some extra damage. But the restorations, basically everything but Branding Smite, I really like for the Necklace of Prayer Beads. And again, getting yourself Windwalk down to a bonus action as compared to a minute is pretty huge. Number 1. So number 1 is the Ring of Spell Storing. Fun fact, I actually recorded this whole section here for number 1 before and realized my microphone was off, so I had to record it again. But I've also since done my research that this rare attunement item from the Dungeon Master's Guide does not function the way I originally thought, but I'm still going to keep it at number 1 because, well, I will. You could maybe swap this with one of the other ones if you think it's less useful. But what it's going to let you do is store up to 5 levels of spells inside the ring, and then in doing so will let you cast them, and then it depletes it, and so on. So one of the nice benefits of it is you can store spells in the ring, and in doing so, it could be from somebody else's spell list. So you're the Paladin. This could be a way for you to just store in 5 Cure Wounds spells, 5 Detect Magic spells, for example, if you don't want to have Detect Magic prepared for the day. You could store in Smite spells in here, things like your Find Steed or Find Greater Steed when you get that later on. So that way you have access to it and you don't necessarily have to have it prepared. Or get some spells from the Cleric or the Wizard or whatever you want to have. Probably someone that uses Charisma or has a high... uses their ability score, their casting stuff. So someone that's really good at casting, you'd want to have them put the rings in there, or the spells in the ring for attack and spell save DC. The reason I originally put this on here was I thought I was under the impression that you could store a bunch of different spells in the ring, and then you could use those spells to fuel Divine Smite. I thought it out further as I was talking through it in the video that you guys didn't get to see, and I confirmed it online. Because Divine Smite uses spell slots, not stored spells, it wouldn't work. You could use potentially this to supplement that, have 5 levels of spells in the ring that could potentially be for other spells you might normally cast, like, I don't know, whatever you might use, a smiting spell, maybe Shield of Faith, Zone of Truth, those could all be in the ring, and that allows you to use your main spell slots more for smiting, which obviously is what you want to do. You want to get more spells for smiting, which I guess you could also have thrown in Pearl of Power here at number 1 because it will give you a spell slot back, which you could then use for smiting. But I think it has a lot of good versatility. You can put a lot of different spells in here. One a really popular one is just get somebody to cast Shield into the ring 5 times. So that's 5 times you'd be able to get a +5 to your AC. And as a Paladin wearing heavy armor, typically plate mail and a shield and maybe some other bonuses, that could be really big. It has a lot of great options. So sorry that this is the second time around and it's not as intriguing as I thought it originally was due to the fact that Ring of Spell Storing doesn't work how I had initially planned. But let me know what you guys think about this video. Thank you for understanding that this Top 10 Tuesday video is coming out on a Wednesday. Work has been completely awful, and I've just had a sense of existential dread every time I go into the office, and it continues with me when I leave the work. So I've been just so frazzled, and I really appreciate you guys understanding me delaying a little bit. So if you did like this video, be sure to give it a like and subscribe to the channel so you can stay up to date when more of this kind of content comes out. Next week, continuing on the alphabetical list, will be Ranger, which should be interesting because I have a lot of opinions on Ranger in general, but finding what magic items they can use will be an interesting exercise for me. We're also remarkably close to 10,000 subscribers on YouTube. So stay tuned because there'll be some sort of big Nerd Immersion 10K giveaway. And I'm reaching out to a bunch of my contacts to see who can provide me cool stuff for me to give away to you guys. And lastly, if you want to see more of me and my friends doing things live on the internet, Tuesday and every other Sunday, we play. There's actual live gameplay from ongoing campaigns as well as one-shots. Mondays, I've been doing world building lately, and Wednesdays, I do pop culture D&D character building. So if any of that tickles your fancy, there's a link in the description to the Twitch channel as well. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.